Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Richard Bate, President-elect of IOSH, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the first webinar in our Sustainability in Action series. I'm really excited about this series. So today, I'm joined by Paul Irwin-Rhodes, the Head of Sustainability and SHE at Greggs. With a history of working in the food and drink industry, Paul's developed the Greggs SHE management systems with a focus on reducing business operational risk. Paul's a keen surfer, although he claims not to be very competent. One thing he certainly is competent with is today's subject area. So Paul, I can't wait to kick this off. Surfing and Greggs. I mean, mate, we just got to talk.
It's my two favourite things, Richard.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about surfing, I want to talk about the amazing sausage rolls. Paul, why don't you just kick this off by, well, first of all, saying hello, and then just take us through your journey into sustainability.
No, I will do. Thanks, Richard. It's good to see you again. So I'm Paul Irwin-Rhodes. So I'm a chartered safety practitioner with IOSH and have been for round about, I'm probably coming up to a quarter century as seeing my IOSH level. My background is I was a chemist. So I graduated in chemistry, worked in the chemical industry in paints and paints, varnishes, and liquid plastics. Realised very quickly it wasn't as exciting as I wanted it to be, so I was headhunted internally and moved into a health and safety practitioner role, working in high-risk environments. So, and for anybody on the call who understands the coma regulations, so in an upper-tier coma site, so dealing with big risks, it was great, and lots of environmental risks in there as well. So moved from the chemical industry into Greggs round about 21 years ago. I was Greggs' first environmental legal compliance specialist. Greggs are a lovely organisation. Always want to do the right thing, so brought me in as to support them in their environmental management program and compliance program, and which I've done since I've joined. Really, what happened is legal compliance from an environmental point of view just morphs organically into sustainability. So where Greggs have always done nice things, they've always been a very, very responsible organisation. Probably didn't focus in the early days on those areas that were material. That's not a criticism. That's probably just the development of sustainability or responsible business practice as was. Just making sure we did the right thing in the right way. I've worked on our sustainability strategy really since about 2010, 2012, in shaping it into what it is today. Now, one of the good things at Greggs, and I'm very lucky, so Ian Gregg, who was our founder, Ian was an environmentalist in the 1960s. Way before it was a trendy thing, he was also very keen on tackling social injustice. So there's two parts of the ESG framework covered, and Ian's values and culture remain with the business now, even though Ian hasn't had a place in the business for close to 30 years. So I have an easier job pushing the sustainability door open at Greggs. But yeah, it's a key part of how we operate as an organisation. And I have to be honest, the health and safety part is aware of. Head of SHE and of sustainability. I split my time equally across both facets. But as we'll see through the webinar today, that area between those two facets is very grey and overlaps quite a lot of times as well.
Fantastic. I didn't realise you started your career as a chemist. That's something perhaps we can explore a little bit later on. But I want to pick up on something you said there, pushing that door open for sustainability, and also, you know, that crossover between sustainability and occupational safety and health. How do you see that crossover? Because, you know, clearly some people will see environmental safety in one area, sustainability in another area. I think you and I are quite aligned. We see all of this as you know, a single subject area. Whether we're competent in all of those areas is another matter. But what are your thoughts on that? Because you introduced it. I'll let you carry on with that.
No, I think you're right. I think it all boils down to that single purpose of what we. If I take us as a practitioner group, our purpose is to make our businesses responsible and look after the people who are stakeholders in our operations. So for Greg's, that's our colleagues, all of our workforce, that's all of our customers, that's anybody else, contractors, everybody else who's affected. So that's just being a responsible business. But taking occupational safety health as the area that you're focusing on, sustainability is very similar. It's just being a responsible business. It's just doing the things that you need to do to de-risk your organization and have, where possible, a positive impact on those stakeholder groups.
Yeah, that's an area that I'm fascinated by. You and I come from very, very different backgrounds. You obviously work in, you work in food. I work in the event space. And I kind of defaulted into sustainability. It wasn't somewhere I wanted to be. I had no choice but to work sustainably. I've worked on 2 Olympic Games, and my first experience was back preparing for 2012 in London, when I had no idea what sustainability meant in the events world. And then I was really, really fortunate. I managed to join Formula E, the electric racing championship. I was there for 8 seasons in total. And it was during that period that I met some inspirational people like Julia Pallet, Iona Nielsen, Pierluigi Zaccaro. And it was that point I thought, as an events guy, I'm a jack of all trades. I don't do anything really well. So I wanted to do something well. So for probably the past 5 years, I've focused on sustainability, but very much on social sustainability. I know Greg's do some work in that social sustainability space, and I'll come back to you in a second on that. But I think one of the things that has annoyed me over the years is you say social sustainability, what it means to me, what it means to you, is not, planting trees in a park with a few preschoolers. And there's real value in social sustainability. Is there anything you want to bring in from a Greg's perspective around social sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, we see it as a real key part. So if anybody wants to look at our latest sustainability strategy, our state sustainability report, which was published last Wednesday, what you'll see within there, we have 3 areas of focus. So we have building stronger, healthier communities, which is our social part. We have creating a safer planet, and then we have building a better business, or being a better business. When you look at that safer, healthier communities piece, if you think of what Greg's does, so we are everywhere. So we've got 2,600 stores across the whole of the UK. Normally what I say at this point, I say, if you're in an area and there's not a Greg's store, close your eyes and open them, and there'll be one will appear in front of you. Because it is a bit like that. So we are in every community, and we're in every demographic of community as well. We see it as a real key part of making the business thrive. So there is some conscious capitalism in this. But by making the areas in where we operate thrive, creates a buzz in the area, creates an economic uplift, brings different people in, creates that buzz. The buzz from those people means they're going to come in and spend more money in Greg's, which gives us an opportunity to make more of a social difference going forward. So we do see that as a key part. And we take our workforce from every demographic. So to make sure we can get the best talent into the organization at every level, we want to make sure that we show that at a social level, at a community level, we are doing things to make a difference. It's a real key part of our purpose, really.
Let's stay with demographics for a moment. So clearly you've indicated that sustainability is good for business. Is there a particular demographic that you do focus on, or that you'll get buy-in from that particular demographic?
We do lots of work, lots of insight work across our customer base to see what levers do we need to pull to keep those customers happy and keep them coming in and spending their money within a Greg's. You see differences depending on what's happening in the macro environment. You do see it. There is a general trend of those. I can't even remember what generations they call them now. Me being a Gen X, I just get lost. Gen Z is the one that I hear mentioned quite often. So we do see there's more of a sustainability conscience in those Gen Z. So up to sort of, I think Gen Z was it up to 1997 up to 2012. I think the age ranges. We do see from our insight that being a sustainable business is really important on where people want to spend their money. So they want to come in and they want to know it is having a positive impact. Wherever they spend their cash, it is having a positive impact somewhere. And most importantly, it is not having a negative impact. So we do see that, but we see slight vagaries depending on which demographic group you're looking at. But there is always a positive piece to be taken by being a sustainable business, whoever your customer base is.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that about Greggs. There are some fantastic questions coming in on the chat, but as I've got you for an hour, Paul, I've got a few questions that I'd like to explore with you. One of the questions that keeps coming up, and I get pushback on this as President-elect of IOSH, is should we, as OSH professionals, you said you've been at chartered level for 25 years. You're ahead of me there. I've been in OSH for 30 years. I didn't complete my chartership until 10 years ago. Let's think about this maybe for you personally. Where's the value for you in having this additional knowledge and additional skill?
For me, it keeps my interest. So I think when you've got the safety practitioners, we deal with reactive issues on a regular basis, no matter what it is. So you engineer out all the risk and you engineer out as much every hazard that you can. But there's always something happens, isn't there? But we've got a fairly mature safety management system. So even those reactive things that come up, very rarely is it something new. Where I get my excitement from the sustainability, or my interest from the sustainability point of view, is I can apply all the skills that I've learned as a practitioner in a new topic area and see difference. So if I go back to when I joined Greggs, from that, taking that environmental compliance standard and doing my influence internally, I'm doing the same now with different topics that sit under our sustainability remit, without having to waive the set of regulations to say law tells me that we've got to do this. So that really picks it for me. It's a real interest for me. And I think just to pick up on one of your other points there, Richard, in terms of the skill sets that we've got as practitioners, is we've done the hard yards in these areas before. We've done the influence, and we've created the business case. We've demonstrated how important risk management is in reducing that risk and the impact it's going to have on our people. I think this is applying all of those skills just into a new topic area.
I think that's key, and it's an insightful comment. I clearly see the overlap between an OSH practitioner, an OSH capability, and social sustainability. I can't see how they can't be inextricably linked. That probably takes me onto a really good opportunity now. Ben, my colleague from IOSH, who's sitting in the background, is going to launch another poll. And what we'd like to know from you, the people who are on in the podcast with us today, we'd like to know what you think. Do you think that you should need to be upskilled in sustainability? So there you go. It's a simple yes or no, and we'll come back to that at the end. So while you're busily deciding whether it should be yes or no, Paul, there's so many areas that we could talk about. I think one of the things that I'm quite passionate about, but not necessarily for the reasons that you might be. Where does carbon footprint measurement fit into your work with Greggs, and how important is that to you and to Greggs?
So it fits in. It's part of our. It's a key part of our longer term safer planet commitments. It's of real interest to our stakeholders, so investors, NGOs, government, colleagues, customers. It's in the vocabulary of lots of people nowadays. We've been measuring and reporting against our carbon footprint for 15 years now. And we've got some very strong ambitions in terms of where we see our role in that net zero future being. So it's a key part of it. A bit like, again, I keep referring back to this this sort of safety practitioner skill set. If I take, I've got a carbon footprint, another safety practitioner on my team who started our carbon journey. It's a bit like carrying out risk assessments. So I see the same skill set needed. So, right, where's the issues? What are we doing? What's the level of risk we've got now? Where do we want to get it down to, and what do we need to do? So it's a key area, but it sits across two. So we've got that decarbonisation piece. You've got that piece around, right, reducing your impact on the planet from a net zero perspective. But you've also got the right, as an organisation, where does climate risk hit us, or where is the potential for climate risk to hit us, either in the near future or further out? And that's a real area where that risk management skill comes in. So looking at, are all of my seaside shops going to be underwater in 15 years? And if so, do I need to think of an exit plan? That's a stretcher point to make a point, but it's an example of where carbon footprinting and climate risk management is really important.
Yeah, valid point. I live on the North Wales coast, and our local authorities are spending tens of millions of pounds on sea defences.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I would never have believed the sea would come up so high in towns like Llandudno or Conway. I didn't believe it would be possible, but it's that's a real concern. I could talk about the impact of that in the world that I live in the event space, but I think it's more important that we talk about you and Greg's. I've got kind of a view on this. What are your thoughts on carbon offsetting? You knew I was going to ask you this question.
Yeah, it always comes up. I think in some areas it has a place, and when I say in some areas, when technology isn't available for you to get rid of all of your emissions, then there is a place for it. But I think it's a personal belief here. Yeah, it's the bottom of the hierarchy. So when you haven't been able to when you've done everything else that's available, I think offsetting has a place at the bottom of the hierarchy. It shouldn't be there as the long-term fix. It may be there as a short-term fix until the technology catches up. But yeah, it's not far from demonized. It has a place, as I say, in that the lower end of that hierarchy. I think my only thought processes or my only challenge around it is the validity and the certification and making sure it's a true offset. What's your thoughts?
Certifications. I mean, I work within ISO 2012-1. It's an ISO standard for sustainable events. It's quite an esoteric standard. And I worked hard to get two companies through that. It certainly wasn't 14067 or 068. I know that you've got some experience with ISOs, but I kind of think this is probably a good discussion to be had here around ISOs or B Corp, or are you doing anything different?
So IOSH, I mean, we've looked at B Corp, and I know through my network, I have touch bases with a number of MDs or chief execs or leads in B Corps across the UK. Unfortunately, from a corporate governance point of view, Greg's can't be a B Corp. Although we do regularly do an informal review of what sits in that B Corp sphere that we are doing or we're not. I think the difference between a B Corp is this is where we are and this is exactly what we stand for. I think the difference between that and an ISO standard is that, especially in the last 15 years, the ISO standard requires you not only to comply with the standard, gives you a framework, gives you a nice framework, follow the framework, align it to your business, but with a requirement in there for continual improvement. So it's not a case of standing still. I'm probably not close enough to the B Corp to see, right, when I get my B Club, when I get my big B badge that I can stick on my letterhead, what's the required, what's the need? Can I just rest on my laurels and just talk about being a B Corp? Or do I have to demonstrate that I am improving my impact on the world around me on an annual basis? And I think that's the big difference with ISO.
That's interesting. Now, I've got great respect for ISO standards.
And Ben Kianchi, Ben, you've just, thanks for that. That's very helpful.
Brilliant. ISO standards. One of my concerns with ISO standards are basically, it's kind of think of it like a car MOT. You're only evidencing your performance on, during your last audit. I kind of feel, I'm not cynical. Yeah. I'm just, and I know there are organizations that will do nothing for 11 months. For that last month before the auditor comes in, they'll focus, they'll throw a lot of manpower at it. They'll start to produce outputs, they'll produce evidence, they'll show performance against targets. So that's the area that sometimes I'm a little bit cynical. And I think for me, in my experience working in the events world, B Corp's more attainable, it's clearer. I think it does get tougher as you go into, your second and third years. Year one's very easy. It's pretty much self-certification. Are you on that journey, and where are you on that journey? I think, for me, B Corp works. But are you guys at Greggs doing? You have your own vision for this, don't you? Your own. You set a standard for your own performance.
We have, yes. So we've got. So our Greggs Pledge is we've reviewed what's important to us. So we've identified the areas that are most important to us as a brand, as an organization, and as a sector. So we've looked at all those stakeholder groups and pulled out, these are the areas of importance. And then we've set very clear ambitions of where we would like to be in those areas. So you'll see, if you look at our pledge, we've got 10 commitments. It's not the only thing we do, but they're the most important 10. We've pulled out those 10 commitments that are most important. We look to set a very clear ambition across a 5-year window. So our current window finishes at the end of 2025. So we set those in 2020. And the idea is if we set stretching ambitions and work very hard to achieve them. And then we are in the process of developing what that next 5-year window will look like. And we've chose 5 years for a reason. So 5 years in retail is a generation. So that was the reason we went with that 5-year window. But we've got that's our standard, really. And then across those 10 areas of focus within there, we have very clear targets, and where possible, third-party assurance of those targets as well. So we see the third party bit, somebody else marking our homework, is very important.
Absolutely clear on that. Let's talk about your 10 commitments. And by the way, I think that's great. I had to go dig to find that, by the way. So maybe Greggs can, share this great message of the work you're doing. Perhaps talk to your marketing team. Just make sure that all of us know about this work that you're doing. But let's talk about the 10 commitments. Do they align with any particular social development goals, SDGs, or?
They do. I mean, when we set the original commitments, we worked with the team at the UN SDG. It's Steve Kendick is the guy who from the UN Global Compact who's in the UK. I kept referring to him with Steve from the UN, which was very over familiar. But we worked with Steve and his team to make sure that what we were doing had aligned with the original UN SDGs. And then 2 years, so that was an easy alignment. And to be fair, if you look at, if you go around, I'm not claiming greenwash for any other organisation, but you do see the UN SDGs used, the pictograms used very freely. Anybody who went to COP26 would have seen lots of companies you wouldn't expect to have all those UN SDGs all over their literature. But what we did is, I think 2 years ago now, we worked with a third party to say, right, of these commitments that we've said we're going to achieve, can you assess exactly how they are going to impact those SDGs? And what we could do is we could demonstrate that I think 5 out of 10 had a direct impact on the UN SDGs. I think the other 5 had either had an indirect impact or supported the delivery of those SDGs. And I think there was only one where we had a softer engagement, which was UN SDG 17, which is about was based on government. I need to find it. I need to remember it before the end of the session. But we do see that as it's playing our part as being a responsible business. The UN SDG team set out some very clear goals, so it just makes sense for us as a responsible business to try and align our activities not only to what's important to us as a brand, but to what the UN have identified as being important to them.
That's fascinating. I do quite a lot of work in motorsport. The fact I've just said motorsport instantly will have people going, not possible for it to be sustainable. And I think some of the challenges that I faced, particularly working with Formula E, was to understand how SDGs could possibly fit into an international motorsport championship. One of the things that we were really successful with is around transport of assets. And I'm guessing transport is a key issue for you.
No, it is. So if you look at our operational carbon footprint, so we run our own logistics fleet, and this is one of those. This comes back to a little bit of the offsetting conversation we had. So we run our own logistics fleet. So we run an articulated fleet up and down the country, trunking product from manufacturing into DCs, and then we run a radial fleet. So that's the Greg's vans you will see when you're out and about. So I think we've got 350 vehicles out on the roads. As we've done lots of other work around our operational footprint, it's the one piece that sticks out, because in the UK we are still very much wedded to petrol and diesel. So we've made some short to medium term fixes. We've done some efficiency drives. All our vehicles are Euro 6. We train our drivers on efficient drive and measure them and monitor them and retrain them where we see them drop to the bottom of the table or whatever. We've got great maintenance programs on all of our vehicles. We use double deckers where we can, so we get more product in. But it still comes back to diesel and petrol use. Diesel use in our case. We have invested in a biofuel replacement for 60%. That comes at a cost. So that is a more expensive fuel compared to diesel. But we see that as part of demonstrating our leadership. So we've moved to HVO for 60%. It's a short to medium term fix while we wait for either the UK government or the logistics operations across the whole of the UK to decide on what their top technology is going forward. Is it EV or is it hydrogen? But it's still, you're right, Richard, it still remains, when you look at the breakdown of our footprint, it still remains as a sizable part, no matter what we've done.
So HVO, I've used that in generators at concerts, festivals. I'm pretty much aligned with HVO. Problem for me that I have, if you look back and you look at HVO, what it costs to produce a litre, then it starts to beg the question is, if a product is costing, let's say, well, like race fuels, if they're costing hundreds of dollars per litre to produce, where's the value? Where's the sustainability value to us as average citizens? So HVO, it has a place. Equally, electric vehicles have a place. hydrogen has a place. I'm going to push you a little bit more on EVs. Are you using any EVs in your fleet currently?
We're using small van EVs. We've got a trial going on, so we've got a handful of them for our maintenance teams, so shop maintenance teams and our fleet maintenance teams, just to see how easy, from an operational, from a user perspective, how easy is it to use and fuel. So it's great. I've got an EV, but I'm quite lucky. I've got a big driveway, and I paid for a charger to sit on my wall. Not everybody has that luxury, so we're just working through that. We are monitoring and working with the fleet organisations. So whether that's the trade associations or it's the manufacturers, on what the development, what they are developing as the next big thing to replace diesel power. But it seems to be taking. I don't think anybody's. The technology, they haven't decided on which side of the technology line they're going to go. Is it E or is it H? Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So again, I've watched the transition from an off-road racing championship, Extreme E, electronic off-road racing, big off-road buggies, has moved to Extreme H, hydrogen.
Yeah.
What I didn't grasp about hydrogen cell technology is that these are big lumps of equipment, and performance is not fantastic. I'm going to share my thoughts on this. I think a highly efficient internal combustion engine, petrol engine, as part of a hybrid system is probably as efficient as I can be, perhaps for the next, where are we now? Perhaps next 5 years. My car gives me 60 miles to the gallon. It drives well. It's a car I enjoy driving. I don't think where I live in North Wales, moving to an EV at this point would work for me. And I think one of the challenges that you will face is if you move your small van fleet to EVs, you're going to face a challenge around charging those, because the network just isn't there at the moment.
No, it's not. I mean, we've seen the network develop, and I think you're right. I went to Cornwall last year, surfing, not very good. I had a week of complete range anxiety when I was driving around. So luckily enough, I found a Tesla supercharger in a tiny village that I drove to probably every other day. But yeah, the charging network wasn't there, and it's one of the challenges we've got. And it's part of something that we're looking at in terms of this trial activity. It's just seeing, we've got a trial going on. I think they're across the country. It's just seeing the easeability, the usability of that from one of our team's perspective. But I think you're right. I think in the next 5 years, a good, efficient, until the technology lands, until the EV infrastructure is there and it works for everybody, there is a place for that hybrid vehicle.
Yeah, currently, if I want to get to a Tesla charger or a supercharger, a quick charger, I'd have to drive 20 miles into Cheshire,
Yeah.
turn around and come home. So clearly, it's not working for me at the moment. Any thoughts on moving your heavier fleet to EVs? EHGVs. Have you looked at those?
So we've had a look at them. Yeah, the technology's not perfect yet, and again, you still have the challenge around charging. Now, for our radial delivery fleets or rigids, we get a lot of asset use out of them. So they go out, they deliver to a number of shops. They come back in, they are restocked, and they go out and deliver to a number of shops again. That charging. So we have filling stations on site. So that filling operation is 3-4 minutes. It's nice and quick. For us to do the same with EV based on current technology, that might have to stand there for 2 hours.
Yeah.
There is also challenge around where you put electricity, where you are putting numerous charging points, because you need more than, if it's a charging that takes a bit of time, you need more than one. So you might have a site. One of our sites might handle circa 30, 40 vehicles, you might be talking 4, 5, 6 charges on there. There's a big drag on the local power network as a consequence of that. And it's not always the case that the cabling infrastructure, not from a Greg's point of view, but just from a general electricity grid point of view, that's not always there as well.
Yeah. So ironically, although I don't drive an EV, mine's a plug-in hybrid. I have converted the power supply at home to 3-phase, so I can charge quite quickly. One of the things that surprised me is how much it costs. Now, I'm aware from friends who have EVs that there's the cost saving that we had 2 or 3 years ago by using EVs. That's probably not there anymore. If you drive an EV. If you're driving a Tesla, I don't know whether you still have that scheme where you can still charge for free, because if you were an early adopter, you could. But, colleagues tell me that, say a 70% charge on a fast charger is costing between 30 and 40 pounds now. So, that causes me to think I'm definitely on the right side of the fence with a hybrid.
Yeah, I think you are. I think it's horses for courses as well. I'm quite lucky. I don't do lots and lots of mileage, so I don't generally, apart from my Cornwall trip, I don't generally do lots of long miles on a daily, weekly basis. So I have the opportunity to charge at home. My charging network, it's fairly, the way I've got my electricity bill or my electricity set up, I can't even say who it's with. Other providers are available. But it works well for me. But again, I have some colleagues in the office who live out in the Hexham Valley, so I have a much longer journey into the office and do much more travel. They can't get an EV to work, so they're the same as you. They've got hybrids.
So we have got some amazing questions in the chat, but I've got a few more for you that I've kind of prepared. We'll work between them. One thing I would like to say to all of you amazing people who are on the call today, today's session is about sustainability, and we can't take technical questions around your IOSH membership or on the different levels of membership today. So I'm not ignoring you. I think Ben, my colleague, is giving you some advice if you need answers to those specific questions on membership. Paul, something that you and I have talked about previously. You have a lot of branches in Wales. You have some specific challenges with waste recycling in Wales. Should we talk about this for a while? By the way, can I take a pause?
Yeah.
Quick pause. I'm a Welshman. I am really proud that I live in a country that is the second best performing country in the world for recycling. So I'm really proud of this, and I do some work with the Welsh government on this. But that must pose some challenges for you.
It does, yeah. And it's a funny one, isn't it? Because this is where I think where regulation is really helpful for the wider societal, the wider planetary and societal benefits. Regulation in this area is really good, because what it's done is essentially in Wales, it's said, right, unless it's real general waste and there's nothing you can do about it in a business, from a business perspective, you need to make sure it gets recycled. So it drives a circular economy. And Wales and Andy Rees, who leads the Welsh waste strategy, Wales have always been at the forefront of that. I'm a big fan of Andy Rees. So regulation has driven all of those people who wouldn't have done this previously, for whatever reason. It's not a priority. They've got other big things to do. They don't believe in recycling. Government policy change and regulation has driven that. What it's meant from Greg's point of view is we're a national brand, so we operate in England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. We now have 2 ways of doing things. So we have waste handling and management in Wales, and then we have waste handling and management everywhere else. And as a centralized business, that causes some complexity, and if it's not managed right, can cause some regulatory risk as well. So it hasn't been an easy switch over. What I would say is, working with the Welsh government team on this, They've been very receptive in terms of the challenges this brings, and they've used us as a bit of a well, they've used us to test some of their thought processes, and they've given us the opportunity to say, this is our direction of travel on this. Are you happy with it? But it does it does have an immediate short-term impact as you move from one process to another process. It's a very first world problem. It is a first world problem because in the grand scheme of things, the reason for that regulatory change is to drive positive impact on the planet and in the Welsh economy as well.
I've been delivering training sessions for business in Wales. And do you know it's split 50-50? There are 50% of the classes or the attendees are pushing back on me. Why should we have to? Interestingly, a lot of the waste handlers themselves are talking about the exponential cost of changing their fleet of vehicles to meet, because we need to separate a lot more product. But I've got a really good question that leads on from this, from the chat. So, as Greggs, hugely influential in the food market, people like to pick up, as I do, a Greggs sausage roll. What are you doing with local authorities around litter, waste management, right at the point of sale? What are you doing in that area?
So we worked. I mean, we've had good engagement. We don't do a huge amount directly with individual local authorities unless there is a request for them. So the work that we do around litter is generally national. So we've worked very closely over the years with Keep Britain Tidy, Keep Scotland Beautiful, and Keep Wales Tidy as 3 examples. We don't just do the normal thing of sponsoring a cleanup and sending everybody out with litter pickers. We like to try and do things a bit more strategic. So it's probably 5 or 6 years ago since we worked with Keep Britain Tidy to develop a retailer's toolkit for out of home and local retailers to try and drive improvements in littering. We work quite closely with our waste provider in making sure prior to any regulatory change, to make sure we provided what they call a bin for structure in and around our stores. And we do litter picking where we need to as well. And then from a packaging choice point of view as well, what we've done over the last few years is we've looked to move to easily recyclable packaging where possible. So I think at the minute we're circa 95% of our packaging is easily recyclable. We've got a little bit within there that for food safety reasons we haven't moved across, but we're in the process of moving that across. That doesn't stop it from being littered, but what it means is it will have a minimal effect on the environment if it is littered. The littering piece is a real societal issue. So we have spoken. I've attended a number of all-party parliamentary groups on littering and how we change society's approach to littering in the UK. It does frustrate us. When I've been out with my dogs this morning, so I took my dogs out at 6:30 this morning into a lovely Victorian park next to where I live, and there was some Greggs packaging sitting on one of the benches. I'm not sure as brands, and this is all brands, whether it's me, whether it's my counterparts at Mac or whoever, Coca-Cola, whatever, I'm not sure what else we can do. We collaborate, we push for it. It needs more. It needs a societal change, doesn't it? So littering, it needs to be non-permissible, and I don't think that's where it is currently.
And I think as OSH professionals, we can all relate to, culture change, whether that's in OSH, whether it's in sustainability, whether it's in environmental awareness. It's a challenge. It's difficult. There are social reasons as well why people may decide that it's not necessary for them to walk to a bin. Why should they comply? And we could talk about this for a while, but I want to stay with food waste, or rather with waste. We talked about litter. How about food? So What are you doing in the community with your food waste? Does that go back into the community? Are you working with any zero hunger? Are there anything that you're doing in that space that you want to share with us? The way that you smile
Yeah,
tells me that
yeah.
you're doing a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a really tough one as well. So we're a food on the go brand or an out of home brand. So we can do as much as we can. We've got very clever forecasting and replenishment systems. So our head office team tells the shops what they're going to need and what we expect them to sell based on weather, footfall, what was happening around them, what happened last year, blah blah blah. We do all of that, but it's never going to be 100%. It's never going to be 100% on the ball. Um, we're a retail unit. We're out of home, so it's in our gift to make sure that we have product on the shelves when before those doors shut. So if you come in at 5 to 6, I don't want it to look like a 1980s Moscow supermarket. We need stuff on the shelves to sell. So that means we will always have an element of waste at the end. We do as much as we can, as I say, in terms of process and rigor and forecasting, try and keep that to a minimum. What we've done behind the scenes, on the back of the fact that we know we're going to have food at the end, we have a couple of areas that a couple of outlets for this. Pardon the pun using the word outlet, which I'll come back to. So we work with local charities. So where possible, we'll donate food to local charities for them to feed people in those local communities. And we've done that. I think we work with about 900 different local charities across the UK. So that's one piece of outlet. We work with Too Good to Go. So product that hasn't been sold, we look to sell at a discount. So through the Too Good to Go app. So that makes sure it doesn't go to waste. And people can buy product at a much reduced price. I think it's about £10 worth of products for something like £3. But then the one that really excites us is we've opened up a number of Greggs outlets. So we've got circa 35, 38 Greggs outlets across the UK, always open in areas of deprivation, where we sell Greggs products at round about 50% of its standard retail value. So people can get a Greggs treat for half the cost it would do in a standard shop. And then the really good bit that we do is we then invest half the profits that we get from that shop through our Greggs Foundation, which is our charity arm. We invest that directly into community organisations in the area around that outlet shop. So that comes back to our building stronger, healthier communities. Because if we can really support those communities and get that economic sort of buzz thriving in there, it has a positive impact on Greggs and everybody else. So currently we're around the 50% of our unsold food unsold food from shops is redistributed through one of those areas. It's fantastic. It gets lots of buy-in. It's a really good news story. There's still a lot of opportunity there. So I would expect food waste and food waste reduction to continue as one of our key themes in the development of the next phase of our Greggs Pledge.
I like that. You've kind of opened the door here for me to throw in a question. I'm going to slightly modify one of the questions from the chat. Food production, food sales. Could this ever truly be circular? How do you see Greggs as fitting into that circular economy model?
I mean, we might not be perfect in the food because it's not quite circular food, is it? But there's lots of facets of food that is. So there's lots of impact around transport. Packaging is the easiest one. So that circular economy around packaging. So the reason Welsh government have gone down this route of driving a more circular method for collecting recyclates is to create that circular economy piece. So the pop bottle that I use today is recycled. It's taken to a waste handling unit. It's chipped and it's made into a new pop bottle, and it just goes round and round and round until it's at the end of its life, where it will turn into something else, not customer facing. So I think there are areas where it can become where it does become circular. I think one of the other pieces is, so where you do have food waste that can't be for whatever, whether it's a quality reason, whether it's a food safety reason, whatever, where it can't go back into the community or can't be consumed by a human, there are opportunities there, so it can go to anaerobic digestion, and then from anaerobic digestion you can create biomethane, which is a great circular and low carbon equivalent for replacement for natural gas from the grid. So there are some areas. The whole concept of circular economy is something that's I still think is at a bit of a helicopter level occurrence and needs just to drop down and see, well, what does it mean in these areas? So whether it's a topic, whether it's a sector or an industry, just needs that little bit of detail underneath.
I guess that kind of also there's several questions in here about scope 1, 2, and 3. I think let's put you and I on the spot. Scope 1, scope 2. I think most people understand what scope 1 and scope 2 is. The bit that's kind of esoteric and is kind of ethereal is what's scope 3? How can we make that work? And I'm going to be really honest with everybody on this webinar. In what I do, in the space I live in, I don't know how I can make that work because I don't have that level of contractor management.
I would agree. I think the way I term it at work is scope 1 and 2 is what we deal with. So it's our electric, our gas, refrigeration gas, diesel, blah blah blah. It's what we do in our operations. Scope 3 is everything else. So where all of our ingredients come from animal husbandry through to agriculture, through to how it's transported, how it's processed, it's everything. It's around about 97% of our overall carbon footprint. And you'll see very similar numbers if you look at anybody else in the food industry. Our pie charts all look very similar. There's probably a link there to pie charts as well. We can have an influence to some degree. So what we've done at Greggs is we've worked very closely with our highest impact suppliers. So that's those suppliers where they provide us with goods that have a higher carbon footprint than other things, meat, dairy, plastics, blah, blah, blah. And got them on a journey, got them to commit to a journey. So they are, we're going to align with your net zero date, Mr. Greggs, and we're going to measure and report on our scope 1, 2, and 3. And then what we'll do is we'll work together to try and look at what's the opportunity to move that product from that level, from an emissions point of view per kilogram, down to that level. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take a long time. It is back to the other piece where we mentioned earlier, just about littering. It's culture change as well. So it's a real culture change piece. It also needs to dovetail very closely with things such as the government's health agenda and food strategy agenda. And then it also needs to look at what we do around nature and biodiversity. So these three facets, if you want, are all competing, and not everyone. A low carbon product, not a Greggs one, I'll use somebody else's. A low carbon food product doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a health product, and a healthy product doesn't always necessarily mean it's going to be a low carbon product. So there's some real conflicts within there. Now the government are working up their UK food strategy. So that's gone for ministerial review currently, and I think all of us in this space we're throwing all of those challenges back in so they can understand that. But it is for a food industry organisation, it is a very big challenge.
Paul, we've already been talking for almost an hour, so we're getting to the end of the webinar. I'm really excited to find out that just 3% of you on the call don't believe that we all need to have some knowledge or an awareness of sustainability. That's absolutely fantastic. I'm also really excited to find out from one of our IOSH colleagues in North Wales that Greggs have just opened up in a town called Littering, which is about 10 miles away from me. So yeah, that's really exciting for me. Greggs is now available to me just up the road. What am I left to say? And for once in my life, I'm actually going to be on time. I hope you will all be able to, if you could, express your thanks to Paul. Perhaps you can just pop into the chat and thank Paul for his time today. I want to thank all of you for attending the session. It's been absolutely fantastic. And really importantly, I'm going to have to mention Blueprint. If you're members of IOSH, don't forget, you can use this webinar today as part of your CPD portfolio. So with just a few seconds to go, thank you all for your time today.
And Richard, thank you very much for that. That was a really nice session. So thank you.
Paul, it's been a pleasure, and I hope I'll hope we'll revisit this in another session in the future.
I'm sure we will.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. Thank you. See you next time.